Welcome to Brink, a podcast about startups figuring things out. Today, I'm joined by David Wolters. Hi, David.
Hey, Bryce. How's it going?
I'm doing well. So David is with One Smart Home. Tell me about One Smart Home.
Well, One Smart Home is a company that helps homeowners make their home smart.
Wow, what a perfect name for that company. So is this a service that you come in and you do this? Is this a product?
Yeah, so I started in 2019 with the vision of a home service business, kind of like the smart home plumber. I would come to your house and help you with your devices that maybe you bought at Best Buy or on Amazon. And through a couple of years of experience with that, helping people, I couldn't figure out how to scale that beyond me. And I also saw that there was a great deal of frustration among homeowners with solutions that were available. So I really wanted to deliver the customer experience to my customers that I wanted. I felt that everything should work together as one system instead of everything working by itself. And so I started, after a couple of years doing the service, I realized the only way forward for me was to create my own system. And so I set out to create a system, and it exists, and I call it Unity.
That's a tough challenge to go out and build your own system. So before we get into what that is and what it is today, I want to hear a little bit more about the challenges that customers were facing and why you had to ultimately make your own system. So, like, what were the top two biggest problems that you just couldn't get around, or did you try any other ways to solve the problem before building the system? Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, the biggest problem people have is nothing works together, and so companies intentionally make their stuff so it only works with their stuff, but nobody makes everything. Mm-hmm. So, like, Ring had a nice doorbell camera, but they didn't have a very extensive line of cameras, and they didn't have any light switches or doorbell or garage door openers. And then Google had a pretty nice line of cameras, but their doorbell wasn't necessarily great. Mm-hmm. And there too, no light switches or garage door openers. So it was really limiting for people. And as a result, we had to install devices from multiple different manufacturers, and then people end up with 15 different apps on their phone and, scrolling like, oh, I just want to open my garage door. Where is that app?
Yeah.
And I was like, it shouldn't be this difficult. Why can't things be in a single app? Yeah. And I can use, if I like the Google doorbell, why can't I install that doorbell but have somebody else's cameras and have them all visible in the same app?
But there's Alexa, there's Siri, there's Google, there's all these home automation tools and assistants. Couldn't I just interact with that? Why wouldn't I just use that to control everything?
Alexa is really good, actually. Yeah. A lot of companies have jumped on the Alexa bandwagon, but Amazon has their own motivation they've acquired a lot of companies. Yeah. So they've created a pretty extensive line, and then they license, works with Alexa. So that's definitely one of the approaches that I took. But they're very focused on like consumer grade technology. And as my experience grew, there are a lot of other more professional aimed platforms that allow a lot more functionality. It's more robust. It's more secure. It also doesn't phone home constantly selling your data to big data companies.
Gotcha.
And more consumers are becoming aware of the privacy concern. So, I realized that wasn't a good way to go. There is another platform out there that started out as a security system, and they started adding smart home capability to it, and they marketed it as working with all of this consumer grade smart home technology. So I bought into that early on. I was a very early adopter, thinking this is going to be great. This is, they claimed to do exactly what I wanted. And like the day after watching the webinar on that, I had a meeting with what was and still is my best customer. But it was a cold call. He just called out of the blue, hey, I just bought a beach house and I want it to be smart. Can we meet tomorrow? And I had just finished watching this webinar. So when I met with him, I've got the system. And he bought on the spot. We hit it off. And fortunately, it was a long-term project. They gutted the house. And I started installing, but that was a year and a half of one frustration after another, ordering stuff in and then finding out, no, it doesn't work with this. And I became, first name basis with the lead sales engineer because it was constant support. And so it was about after a year and a half as I was finishing up that project that I decided I need to make my own thing. And that customer is very happy. That system, if you work within the confines of it, is fine. And the customer's happy. But the confines were really too confining for me. This was, fortunately, that project was kind of a small project. And that system met with what the customer needed. I needed way more flexibility. And a good example, I met with somebody recently, another customer who bought a beach house that was built in the early 70s, and the power goes out pretty frequently, and there's an on-site diesel generator, and has a diesel fuel tank buried under the dune, and the state will never allow them to pull that out and replace it. So they decided to keep it there and stick with the diesel generator. But the generator doesn't always start when the power goes out. It generally does, but it's not totally reliable. So they wanted a way to monitor if the generator started or not. And if it didn't, it would text them, and they could call the next door neighbor, and the neighbor could go over and turn the key. And my Unity system was perfect for that. I put in a wired sensor on that and battery backup on the Wi-Fi router and everything. And it works great. But there's no way an off-the-shelf system has that flexibility.
Right. So let's talk about Unity a little bit more. So this is, would you say this is one of the only systems, if not the only system, that's been built from a unique perspective of you are an installer, you're also a frustrated homeowner. Like this has been built from years of frustration, trying out all these other things. So is this a solution that is made for the homeowner or the smart home installer? And who is, what homes is this best in, or is it every home?
That is a brilliant question.
Thank you.
And thank you for asking it. Because as a professional installer, most of the technology that people are aware of is designed for homeowners. So to service it, you actually have to be in the home and on the same network. And that's really inconvenient for a professional. You have to roll a truck to go service. You have to set up a time that the homeowner will be there and let you in. So Unity is designed to allow military-grade encryption access to the back end of the system, so I can actually do maintenance and firmware updates and things like that from my office without having to roll a truck. And that's something that's truly unique among the smart home systems. The really high end, there are some really high end systems that are designed for the 1%ers, and they have that functionality built in, but a very limited market.
Okay, so you're selling to the smart home installers then?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right now, it's proprietary. It's my secret weapon.
It's your secret weapon. Yeah, which is interesting. We talked about that before, that there's a few different ways you can build this business. And one of them is that this is just your secret weapon. And you mentioned that your frustrations long ago were that your only way to grow your business as a smart home installer was, like raising your rates or, picking certain packages that you would install, or what you didn't like what the options were. But this gives you an unfair advantage. And so are you still debating going that route, or are you set on bringing this product to the larger market? And
so another excellent question. The end of last year, I kind of decided that with the resources that I have available to me, my best path forward is keeping it as my secret weapon and focusing on the service and delivering the best possible experience for my customers who are homeowners in West Michigan. And I kind of made myself content with that vision. I had a phone call the other day from a buddy in California, and he's been in the audio video industry for many years. He has a booth coming up, or he has a booth reserved at the CEDIA Expo in September in Denver. And Alan said, I want you in my booth with Unity. Nice. And I threw every excuse in the book at him. It's not ready. I can configure it and make it work. I don't think anybody else can. To get it. And he's like, what would it take to get to the point where anybody could configure it? Like, well, big investment. I need software people working on this. And, I put this thing together. It works great for me. Mm-hmm. But I don't know where to get that kind of investment. And Alan was like, well, that's really not that difficult to solve. You just put a list of things together that work well with it. So this doorbell, this thermostat, maybe put some options in there. You put a page together, and then integrators around the country can just fill out your form of what they want, and you pre-configure it. So you configure it and ship it to them pre-configured, and they put it in. I was like, doggone it. You're just like Bryce. You overcome objections with an outside perspective that would work.
What I think is interesting is, over the time that I've known you, you've gone through these different iterations of what it could be. And every time you discover this new opportunity, there's the path of doing it where it's like, well, there's $1 million investment, $10 million investment, do it. And that becomes overwhelming. But then you survey the landscape, talk to people, and then you figure out a way to just get it done. And you've done MVPs. I've seen the creations that you've made. So I think that's been it's been really interesting to watch you navigate that. What has been your approach for finding that simpler path? Has it just been discussions with different people, or what's your cue to look for a different path?
That's the interesting thing about the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
Years ago, I was straight out of college, and I had just married my wife, who's always been my biggest fan and supporter. And she was like, you should start the photo studio. I'm like, no, we can't. I'm like, we just got married. Like, I want to have 3 years of runway saved up. She's like, no, it doesn't work that way. You got to just do it. And so I did. And I had 1 month's worth of rent from our wedding gifts. And I paid the rent for a month. And wouldn't you know it, within that month, I booked a gig that paid for the next month's rent, and it just continued. Mm-hmm. Well, at that time, I was reading a lot of business advice books, and in one of those books, I think it might have been Guy Kawasaki, he wrote, it doesn't matter what direction you start moving, as long as you start moving. Once you move, the gears of the universe engage, and things happen. So move. And that's so true. I can give you so many examples, especially with Unity. Just setting out on a path and coming along and like, oh, I'm at this roadblock. It's not gonna work. Mm-hmm. And in this case too, my buddy Alan called out of the blue. He saw something I posted on Facebook about Shopify, and so he called, wanted to give me some advice. I've been using Shopify for 5 years, and of course it led to where are you with Unity? And then the very next day, yesterday, I had a Zoom call scheduled with a camera manufacturer, a security camera manufacturer, and they want to be my camera of choice for Unity.
Okay. And
in their sales pitch, one of the things that makes them unique is they will configure whole camera systems for you. You can just send a satellite photo of the property where you're installing the security cameras. Mm-hmm. They'll choose the locations and their devices that are appropriate there, and they'll put a nice presentation together showing the angle of view and then an equipment list of what you need and a price.
Interesting.
Do the full design. It's part of their, and they offer it for free. It's part of the service they offer that makes them unique. And it was just confirmation of what Alan had said the day before of just pre-configure. And that was a moment for me, because I tend to, I think ahead, and once it's in my head, like this is the way it's going to go. Mm-hmm. It never goes that way, but it takes me forever to realize that, oh, there are other paths. You just didn't think of it.
Gotcha. So is that your big challenge now? You just got over that summit of how am I going to get these units out there, and now you're going to pre-configure them. So what's your next challenge then? What's the next block or the thing you're trying to think through? What other paths do you have to explore?
So I really need to get some units installed in customers' homes.
Okay.
And that's, as I think every entrepreneur is always, that we feel like we're always on the brink of a cliff. And do I take that step or do I not? And if I take that step, like Indiana Jones, is the bridge going to be there? I've been on the brink of this particular cliff for about 3 months, where I need to get these installed in customers' homes. It works flawlessly in my house. It's awesome. Can't imagine living without it. Putting it in a customer's home, it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
Are they going to be understanding? Are they going to be patient? Because there will be things that are unexpected.
Yeah. Well, there will be some people listening to this who might want to take a chance and have this in their home. So can people sign up? What would a commitment look like? If 10 people were listening and wanted to have this in their home, would you do that? And what would they have to commit to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely ready. And the commitment is just understanding that it's a kind of a beta product. You might be in, and you'll definitely be an early adopter, but there are advantages to that too. Like in my own home, one of the really cool things about having a fully connected and smart home is I have some heat mats on my deck going out to the hot tub. Well, they burn 850 watts.
Right. You don't want those on all the time.
No, not at all. So Unity pings the internet every 5 minutes looking at the weather forecast. And if snow is forecast within the next hour, it turns the heat mats on. And then it keeps them on for 30 minutes after the snow event stops. I've gone through 2 winters with it, and it works flawlessly. It works.
Nice.
And it's remarkably accurate. There have been times where there's some snow drifting by, and I'm like, why aren't those on? But then I look at the radar, and the snow's still out over the lake. And I can watch. And as the snow line gets closer and closer, all of a sudden, like when it's over my house, the heat mats come on. Nice. So I don't know who it is out there in internet land who's who wrote the API for that, but it's truly amazing. And it's great. It's just convenient and it works. And it's a good example that a lot of people don't really fully realize what's possible.
No. Right. Yeah.
And
Most people are stuck just thinking about turning on their lights and maybe some cameras, and that's it. But there's so much available. So
yeah.
We have to get out of here. But if anyone's interested about making their home smarter, if they're interested in Unity, any of that, and they want to reach out to you, how do they get a hold of you?
onesmarthome.net.
Okay.
And or give me a call, 616-828-5564.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for listening. David, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Bryce.
Yep.